Today, I'm talking with Nivan. We talked about how the good kind of hard on himself can drive him, trying to get the best outcome of a conversation instead of having a winner, and how going into a conversation angry will give the best quote we regret. I'm Nivan Moodley from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello, everyone, and with me, I have Nivan. That's what that was it. I'm already. We just discussed it, and I'm already starting to.
It's always a tough one.
Yeah, Niven, with me, and I said here I'm in Belgium, and I actually want to show this immediately on screen, and somehow my mouse pointer doesn't want to help out today. Where am I here? So this is Belgium where I am, and you are, if I'm correct, somewhere in South Africa, and I
Yeah,
already forgot the exact location, but it will tell me probably. Somerset West. Is that more or less where
yes,
you are?
that's exactly where I am. This is awesome. I've never seen that before.
Well,
What the
I
hell?
like to do that because it shows a little bit. And for the people that are here, I'm recording this and in the evening. It's almost 8 o'clock in the evening, and I think we're in the same time zone. Is that correct? Or do you
So
have a
we
different?
are 10 to 8. 10 to
Yeah,
8.
10 to 8. That's
Hmm.
exactly the same
Yeah.
time it is here. And
This is
let's bring you back on screen.
So
We
something
don't
I have
need.
to tell you about that image you just showed. That
Okay,
copy
yeah.
that you saw, the little mountain that you saw, a couple of
Hmm.
months ago, that was fully on fire due to a
Wow.
fire outbreak in one of the vineyards. Yeah,
So
fully
let's
on
just
fire.
so just for people. So that is
So
where
where it
is it?
says Helderberg Nature
Here.
Reserve, from that green dot, green tree,
Yeah.
all the way
Nature
down to where it
Reserve.
says Lawrenceford Dam, that entire mountain was on fire.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's huge.
and if this is a recent photo, which it probably is, that's why it looks so discolored compared to the rest of the area.
I have no idea if I can see where the time is from that picture. Yeah, I don't know. That we would need to ask Google, but let's let's not jump into that. But that's and do you is there do you know or is it known what caused the fire?
Unfortunately, not at this stage. They're still investigating what the cause was. Um, Look, the interesting thing about it is that the nature reserve was due for a controlled burn because it hadn't had a
Hmm.
controlled burn in about a decade. So even though it
Okay.
was terrible that it happened, it was actually very good for the nature reserve that it did because there'll be a lot
But
of new growth
usually they
and new
prefer to
plants.
do it in a controlled way, and this was less
Exactly,
controlled, probably. But yeah,
not
okay. But
controlled at all. Mm.
they managed to put it out, I assume,
Yes, yeah,
and so
after
that's
quite some time because we're a distance from it and you could see the flames. So it was a
wow.
little bit scary, but they eventually managed to get it under control. The firefighters did an absolutely amazing
And
job.
so you could see, and you're because if I just look at the image, how many kilometers are you away from that place? That
Uh,
seems
if
very
I could
large.
use time, we're probably about 10 minutes, if that. So I
Hmm.
could clearly see the flames from our garden on the mountain.
Wow.
So it was
That's
quite scary. It's humbling what fire can do. Something you take for granted, just a flame.
I
But
can
yeah, it was
imagine.
it was quite humbling. But thankfully, it's all under control now.
Well, and we jumped right into already knowing a little bit about you. So, before we continue with the questions, what else do you want people to know about you?
About me, I'm just agile enthusiast. That's on a work note. Personal side, a man of faith with an amazing family that I get to spend time with a lot because I work from home predominantly. Not much of
Mm.
a hybrid work for me at the moment. Other than that, just super excited to be here and thank you for this opportunity. It's really awesome to be chatting to you actually.
Well, yeah, my goal. Well, there's I've said it I think multiple times here. My goal is to meet new people and to connect. I think it's clear during the pandemic, most of us were working from home and not going to conferences. So this year, I decided
Mm,
it's still a little bit shaky. Let's not go to conferences outside my country. So let's stay in Belgium right now.
mm,
But at the same time, I was missing all my agile friends. So I thought, what could I do? And I thought about, oh, I have that old project that I did in a book wide version of connecting with people. And I was
mm,
experimenting a little bit. Well, we all were experimenting with video and with connections. So I thought, okay, let's see if I can turn this into a video podcast.
yes.
And yeah, it's yeah, like all these projects, community things I do, all of a sudden it starts to work and it takes a lot of my time, but it's really nice. It's a way to connect with old friends, people like we just discussed before,
Mm,
before we started, like people like GB that I haven't seen, I think, in 5 to 7 years,
mm,
and others that, yeah, that it's not that long ago. But also other people that I've only met online and never met physically, or people
mm,
that I haven't met at all. And so this is what I'm doing, talking with people, and getting to know each other,
mm,
and already now learning about a fire that is very close to you. I probably would not have heard it in email or in other conversations that we would
mm,
have had. Maybe if you would have been in contact at the moment that it happened, you probably would have shared something, but
yes.
that's about it. And so this is for me a nice way to learn about people all around the world, and what affects them. And
Mm,
so yeah, that's what I like to do. And thankfully, and yeah, like yeah, agile friends that just invite other people that I need to talk to, it makes my network grow beyond what I could do myself. It's really nice. So
that's
let's jump
amazing.
into that
Mm,
first question. That is, what is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
sure. I think who influenced me the most, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because sometimes we look at influence and we always see the positives. I think there's
Mm,
negatives as well. I think, especially with what I experienced early in my work career. Unfortunately, at that stage, we were still working through, what can we say, the ending of apartheid. So, unfortunately, that kind of work environment where you were a non white person in a work environment, that did result in some negative experiences, but it influenced me and made me a stronger person
okay.
than I was back then, more standing up for myself. So that was a bit of a negative side, but became a positive in the rest of my life. Other things that have influenced me, I think definitely my family is a big one, and maybe it's a bit of a cliche to say, but I'm surrounded by family members who have been through difficulties that I could never imagine, but they've come through stronger. And that for me shows the resilience and strength that a person can have. And I think with what you touched on just now, with being disconnected where we are right now during COVID, we were so disconnected from one another, feeling alone. So we have so much resilience built into us. So it's amazing that you're doing this because we do need to reconnect. We do need to see each other face to face as well as virtual. Virtual is still cool, but nothing. I don't think anything can replace face to face. Um, Anything else that really influenced me? I mean, like I said, my faith has definitely been a big one. That's helped me
Mhm.
through exceptionally tough times.
But
Unfortunately,
before you go into
yeah.
more of that, I want to see if there is a connection between the first two that you talked about, because you talked about some difficulties at work, or the
Mm,
difficult situation, and
yeah.
then being surrounded by people who supported you, who've been to
Mm,
things that are probably a lot worse than you were into. Did
mm.
that inspire you to see the positive side of the things that happened to you at work, or is that not connected?
That's a good question. I need to take a moment to think about that. I think absolutely, and I'll say why is because when you're going through those difficulties at the time, you can never ever tell why. You can
Mm,
never ever, we get taught in the agile community to ask the why. Unfortunately, when you go through certain situations in your life that are exceptionally difficult, the why is not something you even think about because you're just dealing with the pain at the time or the struggle
mm,
at the time. So I think seeing what my the people that I know have been through, and looking back, you realize that these difficult times can be quite temporary, but at the time, it feels like this is your whole life.
Oh yeah, the whole
You
world is
know?
shutting down and everything, and then there
Exactly.
is a tunnel vision that you have at the moment, and that's also I think this is also what makes us survive at that time.
Mm,
You have that tunnel vision to focus on a certain solution or a certain problem or whatever. That's probably what helped us, yeah, I don't know, decades ago,
yes.
when we are yeah, when we
Mm,
didn't have computers and anything like that. uh, so there's definitely that part. So it has some, yeah, probably it's because of that in the past that it might not help us to look broader, so
mm,
sometimes it can be better, but at the same time it I can definitely believe it helps us to focus on certain of these things. But
mm,
then it's like you say, it's good to afterwards, when the problem is gone, to sit down and do, well, basically a kind of retrospection,
mm,
yeah, retrospective, like, okay, what happened, and can we learn from that? And
mm,
that's what I'm hearing you say, that you look back on your life, or on certain parts of that life, and you
mm.
started to reflect on, and okay, and say, okay, I grew from that. That's what
Yes,
I'm hearing.
absolutely. Absolutely. You're so true. I mean, I didn't expect this talk to become so personal, but I'm going to organically go with it, right? So I think people look at me now and who I am, and I consider myself relatively outgoing and strong in terms of who I am. But I came from a place where I was terribly bullied when I was a young person. Terribly bullied
Mm.
every day. I remember dreading going to school because this person would be waiting there for me. And you look back and you think, I should have been stronger. I should have been this. I should have been that. But it just makes you realize that at the time you may not know any better, but that's not the end of your story. You know, if you
Mm.
keep pushing through, keep really pushing hard, you can overcome any obstacle. Yes, it may. I don't want to say use the word haunt, but it may influence who you are as an old person. But
Well,
there are
at
yes,
least it did for you. There might be other persons where it worked out differently, but for
mm,
you, you were
absolutely.
able to pull through and to do that. But at the same time, I heard that at some point, and I don't know if you'd still do it, but at some point you were, looks like you were also very hard on yourself, in the sense that
Mm,
you say, "Oh, I should be stronger," and whatever.
mm,
But it looks, if I, maybe I'm steering a little bit there, but so you tell me if I'm wrong. But it looks like you also passed that stage, that you're like, okay, I no longer believe that I should have been stronger. Is that
mm.
correct, or am
So
I?
no, this is the way you're unpacking this is absolutely beautiful. I'm not going to lie, I love it.
Okay.
So I'm still a little bit hard on myself, and I think that's
Hmm.
also what drives me.
Oh.
But it's a two-edged sword because if you too hard on yourself, then the most simple thing upsets you. But if you hard on yourself in the right situations, it can drive you to accomplish amazing things, honestly. And I really think that it is that drive of, firstly wanting to find purpose for my life, as well as knowing that, I want better things in my life. I want to make other people's lives better. And that's how I really started on the agile journey, to be quite honest, is searching for that sense of purpose and wanting to make my life better, my life, the people around me's lives better, as well as my colleagues at work's lives better. And that's how I started this journey, actually, is through that.
So that
So,
that is, well, that is, yeah, what I would say.
mm,
Well, the perfect is maybe the wrong, but that's definitely a great answer for that first question, because we were looking into, okay, what influenced you and who you
mm,
are. And I think if we just look at the different parts, I interrupted you at some point. You wanted to add something. Do you still feel you want to add that, or because now we went in a very deep one other thing?
yes,
I'm not sure if you still want
I
to
think.
add that other part, if you still
Um,
remember.
I
Because
think it was with the bullying and kind of being resilient and coming through it. Oh, I was going to say the other thing that I think is quite important, with mental resilience, is to not be afraid to seek help. And I think
hmm.
as men, especially, when we grew up, it's something that I'm so trying not to instill into my son. The premise that men should not seek help, not be too emotional. not cry too much. And it's an everyday journey and an everyday learning for me not to be like that with my own son. So that's definitely something I have to say, that when it comes to the pains of the past, if it is something that is troubling you every day, like, seek help. Speak to someone, speak to a counselor, speak to a psychiatrist. It has helped me immensely doing that, honestly.
Yeah,
But I
and
think that's kind of what I
thank you
wanted to
for
add.
adding that, because indeed there's and yeah, I think it might be similar for women, or on a different
Mm,
scale or on another scale, but definitely men, we get, or at least I got over it also some of that messages when I was younger
mm,
about, okay, asking for help, crying, whatever. It's
mm,
even I think I already talked a little bit on another podcast about it, and I don't want to go too much into details of my story because otherwise it takes again 3 hours. But I've been in a work situation where I got some feedback that made me cry, and it was actually positive feedback, but I was
mm,
just
mm,
blown into tears because I was so, yeah, it was emotional.
mm.
And I didn't have any problem with that, but some of my colleagues actually had problems with that because they felt at ease. Yeah, they didn't feel at ease. For them, it's like,
Mm, that,
no, you're
mm,
not supposed to cry, especially not after positive feedback. And I was like, I feel perfectly okay with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's definitely in our society, and that's not even 10 years ago. So that's,
mm,
yeah, it's still in our society, it still is around us, that we
mm,
send that message. And like you say, it's hard to make sure that we don't send that message to our children,
mm, mm,
and to the people around us, that okay, crying is okay. It's
mm,
yeah, it's very tempting, for example, when a child is crying even after falling down, to say everything is fine. No, if you're crying as a child, it's not fine. And it's okay to say, it's okay to feel bad or to
sure.
have pain or whatever.
Absolutely.
And I'm here for you. I think it
Mm,
will be okay. You're not going to die if it's just falling whatever, and
mm,
you
mm,
just fell off your bike or something like that. But I do understand that you feel pain, and that right
mm,
now you're scared that you'll never be able to bike or whatever. That all that kind of emotions are very normal as a child. And
mm,
somehow I remember seeing the reason why I'm talking about falling off a bike is because I actually had that with one of my children, falling off, and my first urge was to say, "Oh, it's nothing," and then I
mm,
realized, but wait a minute, for this child, it is not
sure.
nothing. It is a big pain. There is a big
Mm,
trouble, and whatever behind it,
mm,
and it's acknowledging that. And somehow, as a parent, it's very tempting to say the world is fine. But from our point of view, when a child is falling while learning to drive a bicycle, it's
mm,
fine because we know this is how it's going to work. You
mm.
fell, you fall like 10 times, 20 times before you're able to
Yes.
bike. And so we know this is normal, but that doesn't mean that that pain is not real. And we should
Mm.
really be very careful
Be
not to
conscious
send
of
the
that. Yeah.
message that, yeah,
Absolutely.
you're not about, you're not allowed to
Absolutely.
cry, and it's wrong.
Mm,
And that's yeah, I recognize what you say about, as a parent, how difficult that is to do that kind of thing.
mm.
So yeah, like you say, indeed, we've jumped right into the very emotional and very deep part of this. That's, yeah, it's sometimes these questions have that. I'm really I'm still glad 10 years later about the questions that I selected, because they indeed
Yes.
allow us to go deep when people want to go there. So
Yes.
let's move to that second one. If you had not been doing what you've been doing right now, do you have
Mm.
any idea what would have become of you?
So I think if I hadn't gone into the Scrum Master role or Agile Coach role or Agilist role, probably still a software tester, maybe a bit more senior. If I hadn't gone into tech at all and stayed in sales, probably still in sales. I think I'd
So you
probably,
started out as a salesperson. That's what I'm
yes,
hearing.
yes, correct. Yeah. So I started in sales. I still remember my very first sale. I was eight, 8 or 9 years old. And I remember going to
Wow.
my dad's shop, and I loved talking to the people that would come into the store. And it was a television store that he owned. And someone came and bought, someone was looking for an aerial for their radio. It was still that time when you had those silver aerials that you could unscrew from the radio.
Hmm.
And I think it was quite cool at the time to have like an aerial with a fancy little knobby at the end. So I remember selling this aerial to this gentleman and convincing him that it would be a good choice and looked very cool. And it was quite cool. And it having this ruby red like gem on the end. I remember it like clear as day making that sale, and I'll never forget that feeling. And it is most amazing feeling, when you feel like you've fulfilled someone's need, and that stuck with me. And I was actually in sales because of that moment. That always stuck out.
I can imagine, especially at an age of 8 or 9, that young,
Yes,
if you already, it feels like a passion, and you say, "Oh, I can actually help people and make money of it," because that's the other
yes,
part.
that's
Of
the other
course,
part for sure.
especially at 8 or 9, thinking about, "Oh, okay, that's I just talk to people and I make money. Okay,
Yes,
that's what you do for
I
life.
think
I
I
can do
actually,
that as well."
yes, I actually think I got a small commission out of that if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, that was the question that I didn't dare to ask, because indeed, I think as a parent, it's a good way to acknowledge your child
Mm,
that, okay, this is just something good you did.
mm,
You learn that, okay, this is not just selling and it's just not talking, but that you
mm,
can actually make a living out of it later, and that's what you did.
mm.
And so, what moved you into IT then later, or into the current role that you have?
So I was throughout my career, I think before I started my agile journey, I was always a colleague that uh, just I want to say I went with the flow. So if there was a role that opened up and I felt like, oh, I've got a few skills that might work in this environment, I'll set my CV in, and that's how I kind of got my jobs. Was really if
Mm.
someone said, oh, we've got this role, we think you'd be good. So I was allowing other people and other circumstances to run my career. That's actually what I was doing. Now that I think
So
about
they
it.
were selling the career to you basically, and you said, "Oh, I can do this. Okay, let's do this." Is that
Yeah,
how I hear it?
yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think I had a bit of control as to whether I said yes or no, but most of the roles I had were word of mouth roles where people were like, oh, we're looking for this kind of person. Would you be willing? And I'd be, oh, yeah, I could do that. And I think the key factor there was the fact that at my core, I want to help others, really.
Mm.
And so that's why I was like, oh, you need help. Oh, and I can get paid for it. Oh, awesome. I'll do that.
But at the same time, people were believing in you, because they were saying
Yes.
like, "Hey,
Yeah,
there is something, and we think you can help us,
absolutely.
and or can you help us?" And so
Mm,
you're basically are helping each other, eh? But at the same time, like you said, others were in the control of where you moved. You kind of went with the flow, but you didn't have a, like sometimes people say, you have to have a big career path and you have to know up front where you go. I don't think many people have. I think a
mm,
lot of us, we go with the flow, and we just think that people have a career path.
mm,
But what I'm hearing, and I actually heard this already on this a lot of times, that people said about, I was asked and I moved there and I moved
mm.
there, or I was fired at that job, but at the right moment, and then I found something else. So that's
Yeah.
a little bit how things were moving.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that where people change jobs based on that, and we've got this perception in our minds that if we don't have the perfect career and the perfect trajectory of career, we look at our current space and we judge it like, oh, this is not
Mm.
good enough. Other people out there are lawyers or this or that, and they look like they've got their lives together, and my career path is so jumbled up, and we actually judge it in a negative space. But it's like you said, so many people find their best jobs by following that kind of disjointed career path, really.
Yeah, I read a couple of books in that space last year. I think Range is the most famous one of some of these books, and that actually shows even very. I can't come up with the names, because, of course, that's how it is in interviews like this. But there's actually a few famous people in that book where the career is basically dissected. And
Mm,
when we look at it, it looks like, oh, but these are really famous, and they actually, if you look very deep, you see that their career paths are a lot similar to what you describe.
mm.
And at the end, they're famous for something, and then people say, "See that? No, 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 it's not really that simple."
Mm,
even with people who are very famous and who are experts at top of their game, world class, whatever. But
mm,
even there are a few jumps and things that prepare them one way or another. Like because I can imagine if you look at your Scrum Master Agile coaching role, that there is also a lot of sales that you have to do to
mm,
help people, convince them, and other things. So I can see links between some of these jobs, and as tester, that's the same thing. I see
mm,
a lot of things that there could be links in between, but it's not a designed thing. I think it's
mm,
just you, like you say, you roll with the flow,
mm.
and then you later on you see, oh, but in this job I can actually use some of the skills that, yeah,
Absolutely.
now it looks like I've been preparing for that, but that's
All my
not
life.
how
Yeah.
we designed it. And I really like the fact that you kept saying we can look negative on our jobs, and I think a lot. Well, I have teenagers, so there's two who are now at university or high
Well,
school studying
amazing.
for the rest of their life, and for them it's like this is the most important
Mm,
decision in my life, and it will, yeah, it is an important one, but it's not the only thing. And you will see later on that there will be other things that will move your career in one direction or another.
mm,
But yeah, like you say, we cannot predict that. It's very unpredictable.
mm. You can never. It's difficult at the time, but I think looking back, and as you mentioned, any experience I've had in the workplace has helped me get where I am to now. Whether I dislike the jobs, whether I love the jobs, if I look back, I can pick out of all those jobs and say, hey, this is a skill, this is a piece of knowledge that I was able to bring in and help me in my current role. So absolutely, what you're saying, it really hits nail on the head there.
I don't know the exact points you're talking about, but I can imagine. I think
Mm,
everybody's listening in might remember these kind of things. It's actually something that people tell me about this video. If you're watching this and if you have some of these specific moments, maybe you want to put it into the comments, because that's the thing that is really interesting to learn, because it's not just for me for the having these interviews and connecting with you, but it might have connections with other people. Let's see if we have some people answering that. That might be
yeah, that'll be
nice.
great to see.
Let's jump into that next question. Is that what is your biggest challenge or your current biggest challenge? And at
Mm,
least, because we've already talked very personal, what is of course the personal challenge that your biggest challenge that you want to share? Because some people don't want to share everything, and that's fine as
mm.
well.
So I think my biggest challenge was that sense of self belief and just being able to see what I'm looking for now. Not to get an ego, but just that confidence. So self confidence is something that was a big challenge for me, all the
Mm.
way from being a young person, even into my mid 20s. And I think that was a big thing for me. And I think eventually, you know, you just look at the mirror one day and you think to yourself, you know what, I and it's not about an ego trip. It's just about being confident. And I think there's a fine line between the two. I think all of us have an ego,
Mm.
and we always look at ego as being negative. But sometimes you need that bit of confidence, to drive you, to keep you going. And I remember just looking in the mirror one day and just thinking, you know what? I know we've been through difficulties. Looking at myself and I'm talking to myself. I know we've been through difficulties, but you know, you just have that sense of confidence. I don't know whether it came with age or with experience. I can't say, but it definitely was in my mid 20s, early 30s, where the confidence just set in. And I was like, you know what? I'm very comfortable with where I am in life. I'm not comparing myself to anyone else anymore. I'm on my own journey right now. And I think so often, we knock our self confidence, and it's a big challenge because we're always comparing to others. And if you look at
Mm.
everything around us, social media, adverts, everything. It's all about, saying to you that, you know what, where your life is right now is not good enough. It should be.
Oh, pay some money and then your life
Yes,
will be better, and then
exactly. And that was a real difficulty for me, was that
yeah.
lack of self-confidence. And I think, it takes a knock here and there, but through, discussions and through self-reflection and, just looking in towards yourself and spending time, like I said, I do that with the spending time in my faith. It does help, and I think that's probably my biggest challenge is my self confidence, really. And I think people who know me, they always see this person who's outgoing, always willing to help, and not realize that within it's a struggle. It's a struggle to
Mm,
sometimes get up and push yourself every day. So yeah, I think that for me is the biggest challenge, and it's a good thing that I'm conscious of it and I don't try and
mhm.
hide from it, because then it forces me to deal with it. You know,
Well,
whether it's yeah,
Thank you for sharing that, because it's indeed like you say, we see social media wise
mm,
and ads and whatever,
mm,
we see better versions of people. And like you say, when people look around you, even the people that know you, they only see the outside, they don't see the inside. And
mm,
of course, for whatever reason, not at any moment, at every moment you want to share the insights, even because maybe because you're struggling, maybe because you're helping someone and you don't want to
mm,
burden them with your problems.
yeah,
There's tons of reasons, both good and bad, because
mm,
sometimes it might, like you say, it might be ego. Oh, I don't want to show whatever negative to someone I want to impress. That might be part of it. But the
mm,
problem
sure,
with that is indeed that we look around us and we see all these kind of perfect people, and then we think and we compare ourselves with it, because
mm.
we compare the inside of us with the outside of the others.
Wow,
And
sure,
for me,
that is a
yeah,
good one.
it's part of the reason why I'm asking this question. I
Mm,
didn't really, when I invented that question, I didn't even, well, I invented these questions in like 5 minutes, so I didn't really spend a lot of time designing the
mm,
questions.
mm, mm,
But asking these, this is one reason why I kept this question in, is because indeed, even the big agile names, they we all have challenges, and some talk about the challenges that are day to day this year,
mm,
some talk about the challenges that were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But like you say, we don't always show the inside to people.
mm,
And again, not
mm,
everybody is showing the biggest problem, because like I said, some people are still struggling with something or don't want to
mm,
share it. I've had
mm,
many people, both big names and small names, that said afterwards off camera, well, if there is actually a bigger challenge, but I don't want to talk on camera, which is of course
mm.
perfectly fine.
Of course.
But it's good to start showing some of that insight to people, and I think
Mm,
that is good. And I really like that what you say is that the good thing is that you're aware of it, because
mm,
like you say, well, for me, agile coaching, it takes a big ego to be an agile coach, because basically, a little bit like what you said earlier, we also say that we know that we can help you. And so
mm.
it takes a big ego to have the audacity to think that we can help other people, even if it's true or not true.
Yeah.
Just stating, and it doesn't mean that I have every solution, but I have the ego to think I can talk to people, and
Mm,
together I can help them figure out what they need to do. That's even if they figure it out, just me thinking that I have that power to help them is just ego.
mm,
That's just it. And so I think a lot of us that are there, especially if you're a speaker, if you're a writer, if you're a podcaster, whatever, we're
mm.
putting ourselves there because we somehow, our ego thinks, oh, I'm worth to do this, even if, like you say, on the inside there is a lot of doubt, and there's a lot of that,
Mm,
okay, still imposter syndrome, or why can I not do this, or whatever. There's
mm.
still sometimes the ego that takes over, and that says, you know what, even if I'm not sure, I'm going to do it, because that's basically
Yeah.
what that
I
ego
think,
is doing.
yes, the definition of that I think is a good description of fake it till you make it.
Yeah, and there is a negative side to that, of course,
Mm,
but there is also the positive side, like you say. If you're in your, well, early 20s or even before, a lot of us, we have the, yeah, at puberty, at the same time you're like, yeah, I'm going to change the world, and at the same time you're thinking like, but everybody else is doing so much smarter, and yeah, so there's a lot of that. and
yes.
and at some point you need that, yeah, that's somehow a click that changes. And
Mm,
I see a lot of difference with people who are in their 40s or 50s, that indeed somehow that click happens. And then I just coached a person last week that said to me like, what was I thinking at 20? Why did I doubt so much? Because now I
sure.
see at 40 that I actually had a great life. I had lots of things, and I threw
mm,
it
mm.
away for whatever. And it's like, yeah, somehow that is there.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
I want to move to that next question, and you kind of already talked about it, about what
Mm,
drives you. And is there anything you want to add, or do you know where some of that drive is coming from?
mm. I think, having the skills that I have and having experienced what I've had up until now, it's really a sense of purpose that drives me, and it's always searching for that purpose. And I think my biggest driver right now is I want to leave a legacy. I don't want to just have lived this life and not influence and not help others around me. So I think that's the big purpose for me, is to be able to help
And
others.
do you know where that desire to leave a legacy is coming from?
So it definitely does come from my faith, and I know I mentioned that a lot. It comes from my faith. It also comes from a very interesting. I remember going to youth group one night and a speaker doing a talk, and he was talking about a sense of purpose, and he was just talking. He gave the example. I mean, it's a bit of a dark example. I must be quite honest. He said, when you drive past a graveyard and you look at the tombstones and you see that date, start date and end date, and just that tiny little dash in between those dates, that is the amount of time we have. And you don't want that dash, even though it may seem small in the greater scheme of things. You don't want that small dash to have meant nothing.
Hmm.
And that is something that I've always thought about, and it's been in the back of my head. Like I want my life to have meaning. I want it to have purpose. And I think that's where that's how I really started on my agile journey, was seeking that sense of purpose. And so that's my biggest driver, is I want my life to have meaning.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine that is a big drive if you indeed, and especially if you think about that time between birth and death. It's like
Mm,
you say, it's, yeah, even at age 50, I'm like, okay, I had already 50 years, but if you compare it to the mankind of history, it's very small.
mm,
And what does that mean? Okay, if I've, yeah, I've lost a family member a few years ago, where we had a celebration for, I think, about a month ago. And when you hear all these people talk about what that person meant for
mm,
this,
sure.
for Simon, that really means that there is a lot of people. And that it's a little bit like what you say, you want to, you feel the desire, or I felt the desire, like, wow, if I could have such a life that so many people talk about, that
Mm,
people feel like they've, that this person changed their lives, is like, okay, that's what I would like to do as well in
mm,
life, and help others. And that's the kind of thing what I think that person, that speaker, brought up in you at. And what I'm hearing is you were quite young at that time. What, is
mm.
that correct?
I think I was in my, it would have been early 20s, late teens. So
Wow.
when I was
So
still,
if
yeah.
that's already at that age, you can get that kind of desire to leave a
Mm.
legacy.
But
That's wonderful.
having said that, I mean, I definitely lost sight of that in my 20s. I think it only really, when you go into your 30s, I think the life, when you start looking at your age, because that's also a driver, is your age. And you
Hmm.
start thinking about, oh, I'm in my 30s now. Okay, so I've got this long to like retirement. So I want to try and influence as much as I can during this time. And I'm getting older. And I think the other thing is, with Maslow's hierarchy, once you get to the higher layers, and it's like, okay, this life is no longer about myself. I've managed to, I've earned decent money. I've managed to have good shelter, security, got a place to stay. I have family around me. You start looking now beyond just the regular
Hmm.
things, and you start looking into that sense of purpose, where it's like, okay, I want to start making a difference now and giving back to others. I don't want to just be in that space where I'm just taking and taking and taking and taking the whole time. And I
A
think
little
that
bit to go
comes.
back to what you said earlier.
Mm,
If you're in trouble, you have a narrow focus, and so a little bit your life was kind of, maybe not really surviving, but still it was like, okay, I still
mm,
need to take care of myself and my family.
mm.
And what I'm hearing now is like, okay, I'm sorry, I need to drink.
No, please go ahead. You may.
Um,
Yes, good.
I hear you say that I need to. Well, I'm past that. stage of just taking care of others. Now I can look a little broader, so I can
Mm.
broaden my scope, and
Yes.
now I can focus back on that legacy that you were so inspired about.
Exactly. And you definitely driven the point home there because that's exactly where I am right now. I mean, look, it ebbs and flows as life goes on. Um, it's like, oh, I need to take care of myself. Oh, now I need to help others. Now I need to take care of myself. So it ebbs and flows. But I think definitely now there's more of a balance between the two where, yes, you do want to still carry on taking care of yourself and your family, but you also want to start giving back. You and I think
Yeah,
that will always
and
be.
by doing that, you might be able to help your family as well,
Mm,
and be an example for, yeah, for your family. And
exactly.
like a little bit like your father was for you when he allowed you to make that first sale in the shop. He could have said, no, 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 this is an important customer, don't talk to him. Or probably
Mm.
he was, I just imagine him looking from the sideway on how you were doing that. He was maybe busy with something else, but he saw you, okay, talk to that other customer, and said, okay, let's see what he's doing. And then being a very proud father after you made your first sale, I can imagine that that's how my fantasy is, and I have no idea if that's true or not, but
Yeah, me
that's a
neither.
little bit that's a little bit on how I see what you're
Yes.
explaining today. You're able to take care of others, and at the same time you open opportunities for the people around you, of course. Huh?
Mm. Absolutely. I think that's the least we can do, right? With the time we have.
Let's move to that next question. What do you consider your biggest achievement?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, that's the biggest one where people have a lot. Well, this is for and sometimes I add, and
Mm.
I'll add it now as well, is that this is your moment to brag, and just on Friday, next Friday, I'm putting live an interview with Esther Derby, and she said this is really
Amazing.
really hard because she was raised to not brag about herself, and
Yes.
living in an environment, and so that's basically what a lot of people tell me, like, biggest achievement, yeah, but what is it, and can I really brag? I don't want to brag because I'm raised to not brag, but this is the
Mm.
moment that you can do that.
Yes. I think for me, in terms of personal life, um, I think bringing my family to the Western Cape where we're staying now, from where we were, and providing us with a really good life alongside with my wife, of course. I think that's an immense achievement. Leaving all our family behind, kind of going on our own way. I think that's an immense achievement on a personal side. On a work side, I think finally getting my first Scrum Master job was a huge achievement. I remember, you mentioned shedding a tear with the positives. I think I shed a tear with the negatives at the time because I was desperate to get into this role of a Scrum Master, and I remember it was maybe 2018. So I started my journey in 2016, 2018. I think I got my first Scrum Master job after much tear, much hard work, much investment into myself and networking. Um, and I think also getting voted onto the SUGSA committee, that's a huge one. Maybe I don't take
Hmm.
time to actually acknowledge it as much as I should. But I mean, considering when I started my journey and getting voted in, and it wasn't, I'm not driving that, it's people who are observing me on the outside that voted me in. It's an immense achievement, and I'm exceptionally proud of that. I didn't give up, and I'm very grateful to the man upstairs for that. So it's an amazing achievement for me.
Well, especially if like you say, that the people surround you are the people who vote you in, and basically
Mhm.
say like, hey, this is a person, let's give him that opportunity because we
Yes,
think he will do it like he should do it. Yeah, like we should have someone like this person doing this.
yes. And I think this also reaches back to when you mentioned, with the role we fulfill, you do have to have a bit of an ego. Because in our role, especially in agility, agile coaches, scrum masters, it's a thankless job. You know, you won't have a lot of people coming up to you and saying, "Hey, you're doing a great job. The scrum master's
Mm.
doing a great job." It's more about the team, and that's fantastic. But I think you do need to have a bit of an ego to be able to survive past the fact that you're not going to be the one that's going to get the glory. It's going to be the team, and that's a good thing because you want that. You want the team to be, getting the praise. Uh,
Yeah, what the moment that we do our best job, nobody notices that we're around.
yes.
It's
It's the worst.
but it's only when we leave that then people later on contact you and say, well, ever since you left, we have that, and which
Yes.
is also part of a failure because, of course, if I cannot leave a team behind in a good way that they're able to to work without me, then I've
Mm,
still failed in somehow. And so the best moment is that even when they don't even complain that it's working fine even
mm.
after you left, and then you don't get any thanks at all in a sense.
That's an interesting
And
one. Yeah, I've never thought of that
it's
perspective.
yeah, that's well, this is one thing. One of the things I do is and that's a good tip for a lot of people that I like to
Mm,
give, is that I give free lifetime support on everything I do. So basically, I tell everybody, if I give you a course, if I give you just a small email or this conversation, whatever, even if you just watch this video, I consider that as an option for you to reach out to me and ask for help on
mm-hmm,
anything.
mm-hmm,
Um, and what I've noticed is that then sometimes 10 years later people ask me for help on something, and it's a kind of a way of people giving something back, because usually
mm,
now you've been saying this, you did this from 2018, so that's still is for almost 5 years. And so that's already a long time. So there are people that you haven't spoken maybe in 2 years or something like that, so that you don't
mm,
know how are they, did I actually help them. And for me it's like it's more than 20 years that I've been doing this. So that's because of that free lifetime support. I get sometimes an email from someone that I haven't seen or heard in 10 years,
yeah,
and all of a sudden I hear some other parts, and then I hear typically some of these things. Oh, that's what you did well, and that's what I learned from you.
mm,
And some of that is really surprising. Sometimes I get an email from a person that I thought I could not connect, and I this totally failed, and this person totally doesn't understand. So I do something wrong because I cannot reach it. And then 10 years later, I get an email. Oh, I've now won this path, and I did that thanks to this one sentence that you said. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't even remember that sentence. I do remember you, and I do remember troubles in talking to you.
yes,
And because of that free lifetime support, I sometimes get a lot of these, well, lots, like once a month or something, like, well, maybe
mm,
twice a month I get an email like that, that is out of the blue with a person. And sometimes there is new work coming out, in most cases not, but I don't do
mm,
it for the extra jobs or extra money. I do it
mm,
for a little bit what you say, to hear back and to understand what, how did I touch people's life, and
mm.
what is it, because otherwise I don't hear it. And yes, my ego really likes to have to hear some of these things 10
Of
years
course,
later.
of course.
It's helping me. And the nice thing is somehow, and I think this is a little bit like what you said, the person upstairs or the universe that's taking care of
Mm,
me, because I get a lot of these emails on days that I really need it, on days that I
yeah.
really like, okay, this is a shitty day. And
Mm,
then
mm,
at the
mm,
end of
mm.
the day, I get an email from a person that says, oh, you know, that 10 years. And it's like, oh, okay. And that kind of gives me back the energy for the next day. And
Yes,
yeah, that's nice.
just getting
Uh,
meet, the mates at that point of need, right? So important.
exactly. And yeah, that's like you say, we all need that. And it's ego, that definitely. And
Mm,
like we said, there is negative parts of it, but there's positive parts of it. And
mm.
yeah, it's, we need to again to that balance, huh? And that
Exactly.
helps me out.
You can't let it just overwhelm you that that's all you depend on. You know, then you can never survive.
Exactly. Okay, I want to move to that next question about personal agility. Do you have a personal agility tip that you want to share with people?
I think for sure the one that stood out for me, I was thinking about it when I saw the question earlier on, was really to be confident. I'm trying to think. I was thinking of a fancy way to say it, but be humble in your confidence. And when I
Mm,
say that, I mean, yes, you're the person that's been hired for the job. You've got the expertise. But when you go into a space, realize that you should open yourself up to always being able to learn. Never think that you are always the smartest person in the room, because I think that is
mm,
an expectation of agilists. when you come into a space like, oh, this person's going to solve all our problems. They know everything, but you may be going in there thinking like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I think always be humble, yeah, in your confidence because you never know what amazing opportunities for learning that you could have just by opening yourself up and just having an open mindset when you go into any discussion. So that's something I'll definitely say. Um, and I think also as a
Yeah, and I like the fact that you started out with saying the part about being the smartest person in the room, because
mm,
I've learned, well, I don't consider myself rather smart, and I've learned that if I'm the smartest person in the room, that I'm in the wrong room. I don't like it.
mm,
It might be good for my ego, but like you say, I don't learn anything. That probably means I'm too long in the same room or whatever. It's like, no, that's it's yeah, as a teacher, that might be well, I've seen a lot of teachers who like that,
mm,
but in reality I think that's not even true for most teachers. There's always children that either children or students that are smarter, or
mm,
that know stuff that you don't know, or that are,
absolutely.
yeah, better in new technologies or whatever. And it's not about being the smartest. And I like the fact that you turn it back to the humbleness, is because it's very well easy. It's not easy to be smart, but to resemble smart, and to be
Mm,
wanting to be smart, that's one thing, but trying to be kind and trying to be humble and learn also from a child. Because I try to learn from every day, and I try to learn from almost everyone.
mm,
And it's very humbling to actually, okay, sit down and listen to people that might be, yeah, might be not at the same intelligence as you are, but maybe they are better at emotional intelligence, at, I don't know, better salesperson, better
mm,
communicators, whatever. Doesn't
yeah.
matter. There's always something to learn.
Mm,
And especially as an agile coach, when we walk in, yes, we might have some communication skills and others to help people, but they know their problem the best. And
mm,
in most cases, I don't even, let's be honest, I don't understand half of the problems that people talking to me, but I'm asking the questions, and
yeah.
they make me look smart. But usually I'm asking questions just to make sure I understand half about what they're saying. And
Mm,
because I'm asking these kind of questions, people start to understand better themselves, and then they thank me and say, oh, you solved it. And I'm like, okay, I try to understand it. And that's and but I can only do it, and this is why I'm telling that story, because what you
mm,
said is, I need to have that humbleness to start trying to understand it. And if I
mm,
go in with, I'll solve your problem, and you know what, I'll make people look like I'm the smartest person, yeah, I'm probably not going to help them. Even if I know the solution, the question is, will they even listen to me? Because if I want to look smart, yeah, will they listen to me? Maybe if they're really into trouble, yes,
mm,
because they look for a solution. But maybe they'll think, oh, this is just an asshole that wants to, yeah, to look smart. and
yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, somehow, yeah. And then, okay, then what? I've proven to myself that I'm smarter, but I haven't solved their problem. Or I solved
Mm,
their problem, but they didn't listen to me, so in that sense I didn't solve their problem. So
exactly. Yeah. People can see through the fakeness. And
yeah.
I think a big thing is people want to be heard. I think if you don't respect the people in the room, you'll never capture that audience. You may give a brilliant speech, but when they leave that room, they're probably going to forget it. So it's so
Mm.
important to respect people as individuals, and then you get their buy-in, and then they will listen to what you have to say. So I
Yeah,
think
I
that's the key
really,
thing.
I really like that. It's really about, like you say, it's about listening to the people. It's
Mm,
about, yeah, making sure that they feel heard.
mm,
It's that part, and that humble part that helps in there. So
mm,
that's a wonderful, Tim. Thank you very much, because that's indeed, this is sometimes when I ask this question, people want more explanation, and sometimes I keep driving them in a certain direction without thinking, and
mm.
people think, oh, this is about tools or whatever. No, it's about anything that for you is your personal agility tip. And that's, yeah, I really love that answer. It's not something I would have thought about before, and that's exactly why it's so good. You bring out something else, that is important when you work
Mm,
as a coach with a team.
mm.
Let's move to that other part. And you already talked
Ah,
about that you
yes.
now mostly work from home.
Mm.
So, what have you learned about? Well, let's start. When did you start working from home? Was that thanks to COVID, or did you work from home already before, or remote before? Or how does that? When did that start?
So it did start because of COVID. I think at the time the company I was with before was very against people working from home.
Mm.
Because there is that whole premise of bums in seats meets productivity, which is not the case. Um, so when COVID hit, we were all sent home. Take your laptop, take your chair. Hope you have good internet, and we'll see you in how long was it? Like a year and a half.
Yeah.
So I've been home ever since, and I mean that was what 2020, January 2020. I think we had COVID breakout. I can't remember. I think it was 6 months. Yeah, so about Jan Feb 2020, and I've actually been working at home mostly ever since, and that's actually scary to think. I haven't actually taken a moment just to think that I've been working remotely for that long. Um,
Mm.
and it was fantastic the first while. You had your own time, you could, and I mean, you have to be disciplined with your time, absolutely. But you
Was
felt
that hard for
comfortable
you
going.
to swap to being, like you said, disciplined at home? Is that was that hard for you when you made that swap?
I don't think it was because you were under such pressure because this wasn't a planned thing. It wasn't
Ah,
like you
yes.
planned, oh, yes, we've got plans in place. No, you go home, you have to work. How are we going to do
Well, you
this?
had plans in place, but they didn't take into account that you had to
No,
work from home.
exactly. So now it's like, well, how do we connect with our teams? How do we still have what tools are we going to use? What works out there? Then Teams came
Mm.
about. It's like, oh, Flip Teams is the one we use. And I'm not product punting there. I'm just saying that's what we ended up using. Um, so it was definitely a journey of discovery. So there was all that excitement behind it. You didn't have time to be lazy and not have your ducks in a row. You had to be in all your meetings. Um, there was also, you know, I don't know if it just crossed my mind, but maybe also a bit of fear that you didn't want to lose your job. You still want to show
Mm.
you were being productive. During a time when a lot of companies were laying off people because of terrible sales, terrible whatever during COVID.
Yeah,
So there's
lots of
all.
companies were having
Mm,
trouble, and so I swapped jobs because of the company I was
mm,
working at that time. They fired actually a lot of people, but I was
sure.
still there. But I felt like
Mm,
I don't bring any value to you because I know you as a company you're in trouble. So I said let's not stay there because
mm,
it's actually, well, if a company is in trouble, they don't have time for continuous improvement. They don't have time for they want to focus clearly on
survival.
surviving.
Mm,
And the project I was working on was not about surviving. Well, it was in a sense, but it was on a completely different scale, so that didn't help. So
mm,
I can definitely relate to that feeling like, oh, wait a minute, is this still bringing value for this company?
mm.
So that
And
puts
that's
a
so
lot of
important.
desire. That's a little bit what you say. That puts a lot of
Mm,
pressure. That puts a lot of rigorous to make sure that you deliver something. Thank you for adding
absolutely.
that.
And then I think it transitioned, now that I'm thinking about it, transitioned a bit into also then gratefulness. So at first it was like, oh man, we need to survive.
Mm.
Then it became, oh, I'm so grateful that I get to work at home. And then it
Mm.
transitioned to, okay, I'm working at home and this is pretty lonely. So those
Oh,
are those are the kind of the
and when
flow I
was
went
that
through.
about that last part? Is that
So
after
the
how many months or
loneliness,
days or?
I think it may have been, I think about a year.
Mm.
And why I say that is thankfully my wife was working at home as well because she works for a tech company, so we at least had the two of us. But that was much later, and I think when I was alone, just me at home, it was during that phase of gratefulness and surviving. So it never crossed
Mm.
my mind, like oh, I need to come and goof off a bit or so on. But I think working from home, it's fantastic for certain colleagues. I think some people thrive where they just get to be left alone. And I think, especially in the coding community, software developers, testers, they like that time to just be in front of your keyboard and just do what you need to do. Whereas in colleagues who are used to driving interactions, like our scrum masters, our product owners, etc., you're used to that people interaction, you thrive off it, you need it because it helps you do your job. So for me, I think it's a difficult space right now because even though I'm very grateful to be able to work fully remote, it is difficult to connect with people as
Mm.
effectively as you did face to face, you know. And that, networking and building trust is a big part of being a agile coach, a scrum master, anyone who, depends on those personal relationships to be able to accomplish what you need. So that's the space I'm in now. It's been fantastic. I'm still grateful to be able to work from home, but it comes with the difficulty of not being able to connect effectively and having that sense of community and oneness with your team.
I feel the problem that you have because this is something I hear for a lot of
Mm,
people.
mm,
I kind of disagree in the sense that I disagree in the fact that it's not possible, but I do
mm,
agree that it's a lot harder and none of us are used to. Because
mm,
what I've the example I always give, because I'm teaching sometimes also, and I'm working a lot about hybrid and remote work. And one of the things I'm telling people is that when we go to the office, when I started working in the office, I learned a lot of tricks about connection, like, oh, there is actually a coffee machine, and when I stay there in the morning or when I arrive there, there's some other colleagues that I can talk to. And
mm.
when I'm in a large company, I can actually go to the coffee machine, floor up or down, and I can talk to people from another team, and I get to know them, and then it
Yes.
helps me connecting to teams.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and and so there's a lot of these small little things that I pick up along the way, and
Mm,
all of a sudden now we're all home, and we have and so the tricks I learn from people who've been doing this for 50 years or whatever, so they tell
mm,
me. And all of a sudden now we're all working from home, and we all have to learn new tricks, and nobody knows it. Well, there's a few people. If you compare it, there's people who've been doing remote work for also 10, 20
mm,
years,
mm, mm,
but not that much. And so most of us, we're all looking for new tips and tricks, and we've never
mm.
done, like you say,
Absolutely.
the trust. For me, well, for example, this is an example. For me, this is trust building, and we ask a lot of things, and we went, like you said, very deep from the very first question. So there was already some kind of trust, and that
Mm,
helps to create more connection. And so for me, there's a kind of proof that we can do it remotely. But it's a lot of hard work. We need to work
mm,
on it. We need to do, and somehow, especially remote, we kind of forget these things. We kind
mm.
of think like,
So true.
oh, it's not possible. No, it is possible when we need to design it. One of the
Mm,
examples I always give, when you go into a meeting, into a physical meeting, the 5 minutes before the meeting, when everybody's still dropping in, we have some time and we ask, oh, how is your family? How are the children? And what was the basketball match that your children played? Or
mm.
how is your mother-in-law that is ill or whatever? So we ask
Yes.
all these little questions because we're waiting for other people dropping in.
Mm,
Remotely, most people don't do it.
mm,
We connect as late as possible, and as long as we're all in that remote meeting and nobody's there, we somehow don't talk to each other, or at least in most meetings most people don't,
mm, mm,
which is silly, and which is
mm.
it's hard, huh? Because I have to basically force myself to do this sometimes. And there's a lot of these tricks that I think we still need to learn.
Absolutely. I think another thing that's really stood out during this hybrid time is, we have a lot of colleagues that have been working, like you mentioned, remote for quite some time. And we would have them on a call, and all of us would be in the room. But now we're all in the same
Ah.
boat. You know, we're all equals in this now. It's no longer a case of, oh, because you're in a different country now, you're almost seen as like a, not an afterthought, but you're not there.
Yeah,
You know.
we kind of forget the people who are not in the office. And yeah,
Mm,
even just yesterday, I was in a meeting with, I think, 5 6 people in the room and just 1 or 2 people outside.
mm,
And it's only at the end that one person spoke, and I was like, oh, I almost forgot that you were also in the meeting. There was one
yeah,
person remote that talked a lot, and there was a
mm,
second person that almost said nothing. And right at the end of the meeting, he said something that I thought, "Oh, damn it, Kun! What you just said is really important." And I actually forgot that you were in the room, and I should that
Yes.
you were well, you're
Sure.
not in the room, but you're in the remote room in a
Mm,
sense. And I didn't think about you, and I didn't ask you, and I didn't bring you into the conversation earlier. And then right in the last 5 minutes, you say something so profound that I said, "How stupid that am I that I didn't think about this
mm,
person earlier on and ask more questions?" Because somehow he has a great idea that was actually what we needed.
mm.
And that's
Exactly.
so important. And when you're all in that remote sense, we're all equal. That is so
Exactly.
important.
Exactly, and that really stood out for me. It's like you've got these colleagues. Now we also get to know what you feel when you're being remote. Where it's like, oh, this is what it's like. Okay, it's good, but it's not that great. So it's definitely made the I wouldn't say the playing field even, but it's definitely highlighted the fact that we
Mm,
need to be conscious of colleagues who are remote because now a lot of us are. And it's not easy connecting with a room of people when you're the only one on camera or the only one that's virtual. So that's something that stood out for me for sure. But like you said, it's still a learning journey. I mean, I know there's a lot of talks out there on the topic of being able to connect virtually with teams. But I think we're still finding our way, as you said, absolutely.
and so I because I kind of moved the question also to how long you've been doing. Was there a specific thing you wanted to say as a tip about connecting, for example? Because when you say about these remote people, if you're the one person not in the room, are there
Mm.
tricks that you have up your sleeve, or that you've used, or that you saw people using?
I think the big thing is to reach out to those colleagues who are virtual and include them.
Mm,
And when you do, I know team building is probably a big one. When you do team building exercises, even though a lot of you may be in one cohesive space and perhaps you've got 3 or 4 colleagues who are virtual, try and do some virtual, team building just to make those
mm,
colleagues really feel like they belong, because it's like that whole thing of being a permanent employee and a contract employee. Like you don't feel like you quite belong if you're a contract employee. But
mm.
except now it's like it's the virtual world and the real world. So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
it's real. All of us were real people, but
Yes,
like you,
yes,
exactly, it sometimes feel that there are, yeah, puppets on the screen that are not real,
yes,
or that's how people are sometimes
absolutely.
treated.
And I think the big
That's
thing is also to encourage a bit of camera on time. I know
hmm,
that's something, that's an interesting topic because some colleagues feel, well, it takes away from psychological safety if you force people to turn their cameras on. But I mean, it doesn't have to be all the time. Take a couple of
hmm,
minutes, just everyone turn their camera on, say hi, just greet. It makes such a difference. It brings such an energy to the room. When your cameras go on and you see the person, you're like, oh, flip, I've actually forgotten what you look like because you've just been like a first 2 letters on a screen for the past like couple of months. So I think definitely that's a fantastic idea. Is try and have a bit of camera on time within certain comfort levels. Yeah, that I think is something I'm
but
actually going to
I
start
like
doing
how
as
you
well.
bring it with lots of respect, because some people indeed feel unease, especially
Mm,
if you're looking into their homes.
mm,
Um, Depending on how much space you have at home, and yeah, if like you say, if you're working in the same home with your partner who's also working remotely, maybe you don't want that. Maybe you have
mm,
children or a cat or whatever that you don't want to be seen in, or
mm,
whatever, for whatever reason. But it helps, and I think it's a very hard balance between forcing
mm,
people and encouraging. And yeah, just I'm trying to think, was it Monday? I think it was Monday that I was working with a team that I've been working with long time ago. So a long
mm.
time, like 6 months ago or something. And now I
Yeah.
reconnected, and I remember that the Scrum Master at the time was complaining nobody puts on camera. And I had similar kind of discussions. What you said, let's not force them, but let's encourage them. And
Mm,
halfway in that conversation, two people turned on a camera that I haven't seen before. And it was like, okay, they were there, and they were invited. They could have conversations, and I was listening to them. I was trying to work it out,
mm,
but I hadn't seen them before. And I said it explicitly to that Scrum Master before. I'm not going to force these people to turn on their cameras. And like, I don't know, halfway, one person turned on their camera, and there was one more less one person that didn't turn on the camera. I didn't even mention it. I kind of I was doubting, will I acknowledge that
Mm,
this person is
mm,
turning on their camera or not. I was just I said, okay, let's not say it out loud. And
mm,
like 5 minutes later, the other person turned on their camera as well, and all of a sudden I could now see the whole team, and I was like, wow, this is somehow that psychological safety changed. And
mm,
of course, like I said, there was a lot of work that was done the last 6 months, and then there was a couple of months nothing,
mm,
and that team grew. They felt much more safe, and yeah, I could just feel the difference when people start turning on their camera again.
mm.
Not forcing them. It's like they know they're invited. They know they can do it. I show them a little bit, like here. They yes, I was working from home as well, so they could see
Right.
my basically the same thing that you're seeing on screen, or kind of the same thing that you're seeing on screen.
Yes.
And somehow they felt safe, and all of a sudden they started turning on their cameras, and
Mm. That's
and you could
amazing.
feel it, like you say, you feel that small little thing in difference in team, like, oh, wait a
Yes.
minute, now the energy is changing.
Yes,
Yes, that's
absolutely. But you've touched on something really interesting though, with the fact that we are bringing our work into our homes. That's really interesting that you touched on that, because your home is somewhere where you come to be safe, you hide from the world a bit, it's your own space. And now, work is in my home now. How do I ever, and that's something, just taking back to the remote, or talking about the remote working, that's something that I struggled with was how do you disconnect? You know,
mm,
Suddenly your working space is your living space. And
yes.
especially if you're sitting at, for instance, your dinner table. And I remember having this discussion with my wife. I was like, you know what? I know you really love us sitting together at the dinner table and having supper together with the kids, but because I'm working here and I'm socializing here, I'm actually not enjoying. I feel like I need to break away from this table. It feels like I'm
Mm.
still at the office sitting here. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that, yeah, we're coming into people's homes and it's actually changing the dynamic that they live within in their own houses.
In the beginning of the pandemic, I used to say a lot of that it was not especially that these first few months, like we were not prepared and everything.
Mm, mm, mm.
I was saying to people, like, it doesn't feel, or for a lot of people, it didn't feel like they were working from home, but more like they were living at work, because that's
That's really
it's
it. That's a really, yeah, yeah, yeah. I get you.
yeah, you were trying to make it work. Some people didn't have a special, like you say, a special workplace, or they haven't
Mm,
figured it out. And especially if you have children, and if, like,
mm,
I have
mm,
3 children, they all had to be at the same time connected to school. And okay, we have, our house is large enough that everybody has a single bedroom, but I
mm,
have
mm,
friends where that's not the case, and then everybody was working from that same room, and a lot of
yes.
background noise, and it's like, okay, and yeah, yeah, it really felt for a lot of people like
Mm,
we're living at work, and at school, and all of that, and
sure.
getting connected, getting, and like you say, then okay, how do you disconnect? And so how did you discover that? How did you were you able to do that, or were you already able to do that?
So I think what I started doing was, just on a personal tip, I started going to local coffee shops that
Hmm.
had good Wi-Fi, and you supporting local businesses. Well, that's how I reasoned it with myself. I started going to local coffee shops just to break the mundane, just to keep my mind fresh. So preferably places with a nice view, and that's how I started breaking that feeling of, like you said, you're living at work, and that's worked really well. So I try to do that at least once or twice a week. And
Hmm.
then I'm probably, within the next month or so, going to start going back to being in the office once or twice a week. I'm probably going to start, maybe once a week, I'll probably start going back to the office just to reconnect with colleagues, and be able to spend that quality face to face time with them. Um, but yeah, that's how I kind of broke that rut, was just leaving the house, even if I'm not going to the office, just somewhere else, but just being stuck. And it's allowed me to be more effective when I am at home as well. And I feel
Hmm.
like, okay, this is work time, and it's not so bad because I haven't been sitting here for 7 days out of the week um, at this table. So that's how I managed to break that cycle a bit.
That's yeah, that's really interesting to have that, yeah,
Mm,
to realize that you needed that, and to do that. Okay, let's move to that next question.
mm.
What's a book that you have read that you want to people to, well, that you want to share about?
So I'm currently reading a book called Crucial Conversations. So I'm working
And
my
that
way through it at
should
the
be the
moment.
book, if I'm
Yes,
correctly.
that's the one.
And
That's
I
the
I
one.
put on purpose, I put both covers, the cover that I read on the right,
Yes,
so with the 1 million coupons sold, but today there's actually already a third edition out, and it says 5 million. So if you still want to buy it now, you have to look for that other cover. But
yes.
let's jump in. What do you like so much about that book?
So I think it's just unpacking something as simple as what you think is a basic conversation. And I think it's a big, the book is giving me a lot of learning personally because um, crucial conversations is something that I'm not fantastic at. So it's
Mm.
really a good learning for me, seeing how to be able to handle difficult conversations. Um, and how to try and get the best outcome as opposed to trying to just be the winner. I think a lot of times as individuals we go into conversations and we always want to be the winner. We don't want to look at the
Mm.
conversation and say, hey, you know what, I don't have to win in this. We are conversing and we can come with a common goal, or we can come with a common victory out of this conversation. And that's something that I was thinking about before I even started reading this book, and it's giving me a lot of good tips as to how to go about doing that. The one thing that stood out for me and it made me laugh because I think I've done it many times, especially in my younger years. It said that if you go into a conversation angry, you will give the best speech you will ever regret.
Yes, I really like that quote. Yes, yes, yes. I still remember. I was thinking about where is this going? What part? And then you said the quote, and I was like, yes, I remember that quote. Yeah, it's. But the book is indeed full of wisdom
Mm,
like that, and
absolutely.
it's indeed a quote that, yeah, I do remember. It's yeah,
Mm,
it's so, like you say, when you read that, when you hear this, I think all of us, I challenge everybody who's listening to this to just
mm,
pause this and just think for a minute about your life. And I think all of us, we can imagine immediately like 4 or 5 situations where we did exactly that. We went in
mm.
angry and we gave a speech or we did something, and then later we said, okay, damn it. And just
Definitely.
and I just even this year, not even this is probably less than 6 months ago, something happened where somebody made me really angry, and I reacted, and yeah, I just like, and even while doing whatever I was doing, I could really notice that I should talk with my coach about the situation, and instead of stopping and then
Mm, mm,
just not doing and first talking with my coach and then later on
mm,
responding or
mm,
whatever, kept doing what I was doing, which was writing something wrong. Well, I was explaining why I felt hurt and why I was really angry, and I still think that I had the right to be angry. And I don't regret being angry. I do regret my reaction because there's a lot of smarter ways of how to react. But this is the interesting part. Is while I was doing, I knew I literally wrote down a post-it like, I need to talk with my coach about the situation, and I actually
mm,
did that. I
mm,
actually also wrote in that conversation, I will do this, and at the same time, I kept doing what I was doing, and it kept pushing publish, and I was like, no, this afterwards, the day after, and so someone else talked to me about it and
yes.
said, yes, you were right in what you were saying, but by reacting the way you react, you took away all that well, basically people don't hear your message
Mm,
anymore
mm,
because you reacted in an angry way. And that's exactly what this part of that book is about, is
mm,
I regret the way I reacted, and
Mm,
I don't regret being angry because I still feel that I was treated unfair. I still feel that the person that was react did the thing that he did to me was completely wrong and
mm,
whatever. But my reaction didn't help to sell to to have empathy or have people
mm,
thinking about it. Basically, people just, yeah, I don't know what they thought about me, but because I reacted angry, that it didn't help my situation. And
mm.
that's exactly what you're talking about. That this is the speech that I regret, or it didn't. It wasn't in words. It was in writing, but it's about the same thing.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah. So I think we got to be so respectful and conscious that whenever we have interactions with colleagues, especially at work and at home, you still have to live with and work with these people and these colleagues and these family members, going forward. So I think it's always important to be as respectful as you can be. I mean, sometimes, the fire just, woof, just builds up and you're like, oh,
but
man.
But that's the thing. I had another conversation recently where people said were reacting about you cannot be angry at work and your emotions are not allowed at work. And I disagree. I think
Mm,
emotions are allowed at work. What is not allowed is the speeches and the reactions. So it's for me it's perfectly okay to say I'm angry. I don't like the situation, but
mm,
not acting out the angriness. And what I did was acting out the angriness instead
mm,
of just stating. I tried, well, I said it in I said why I was angry, so that part was kind of okay, but then I added some extra stuff that I shouldn't have said
mm,
because of that thing. And that's the kind of thing we need. And that book really is good about showing the crucial part, because that's what crucial conversations is about. It's not about ignoring that part,
mm,
and it's about realizing your angriness, or at least that's what I'm. It's about 10 years ago that I read the book, but it's, and
mm,
I should probably reread it because of that situation. But basically, for me, it's like it's recognizing the emotion. It's about
mm,
understanding what's happening, and then finding a way to tell to the other person, like, this is what makes me angry, this is what's happening, and having that conversation. Because the what either people are doing what I did, is acting out the angriness, which doesn't
mm,
help. Either people are swallowing their angriness and not
mm.
doing anything,
And it explodes
and
at some stage. Mm,
exactly at some
mm,
point. And that's where this has come from. Well, no,
mm,
it's something that builds up and then explodes. No, it's,
mm,
and then people. So we need to find a right place on talking about it in a decent way. And that book helps, really is really
mm.
showing up, and about the different kind of conversations, because it's also showing that if you have a repeat conversation,
Yeah.
that's the part that I learned so much. I don't know if you read that part of it yet, but there is a part of it where it says about repeat conversation. If you have a third or a fourth time the same conversation, it's no longer about the problem. It's about the fact that, okay, we have a repeat conversation about that problem, and for whatever reason you don't hear me, and you don't
Mm,
hear that I'm actually have that emotion, either could be sad or mad or whatever, but you don't hear my message. So it's
mm,
no longer about that message of you treating me badly or you making me sad or whatever, but it's not about it's you don't even hear me when I complain or when I talk about that. So that's a
mm.
different kind of conversation.
Yeah.
And that part was like, when I read that part, it was like, oh yes, this is what I have been doing, and this is why I have trouble with that and that person.
Yeah.
There were some really examples that I felt like, hey, this is me with that other person. That's
Mm,
exactly that situation that I'm in.
yeah. There's some
It's
real
yeah,
wisdom there. Yeah.
it's I'm not surprised that this book sold so much. It's a real crucial book for crucial conversations.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the rest of the read now after chatting with you.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I gave away some of that stuff, but it's
Oh, that doesn't
definitely it's.
matter.
I want to somehow my mouse pointer. Okay, yeah, I want to move to that next question.
Sure.
What's a question that you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
Hmm. Sure. These have been such brilliant questions. That's a tough one. But look, for me, I think the biggest, what drives you probably is a big one. I would say, um, probably asking like, what is your sense of purpose? But that goes with the drive, what drives you as well. But sometimes people don't connect purpose with what drives them.
Mm.
So that's a fantastic question. I mean, if there was questions I would ask, number four would be the one. So I can't think of one to add to this. I mean, maybe.
Is there anything else that you want to share? The things that you typically, I don't know, or that you think some kind of wisdom of some kind of thing that
Mm,
you want to teach teams or people that you work with? Is there anything else that there is?
so I think I wanted to go back to the whole thing of, when we chatted around personal agility tips. I think a
Mm,
big one I need to stress to, especially budding agilists, whether you be product owner, scrum master, is to be gentle. Don't be too difficult on yourself and realize that you're on your own journey. I think, especially in the agile community, you can quite easily compare yourselves because you've got this ego within, that's driving you. It's very easy to be in a competition with those around you, where it's like, oh, this person has
mm,
been to this conference, this person has spoken to this person read that book, this book. It's so easy to allow those things to get to you and break you down, thinking that, oh, that whole sense of imposter syndrome, it's, I'm not good enough for this role, I'm not fulfilling what I hope to in this role. So I think it's so important, and that's a tip I give to budding scrum masters or agile coaches, is to be fair with yourself as to where you are in your journey, and realize that you're on your own journey. You're not living someone else's
mm.
journey. That's definitely something that I'd love to leave as a tip for any colleagues who are starting this journey afresh, and even for colleagues who are perhaps on this journey already. I think be gentle with yourself, with the journey you're on.
Yeah, I really like that because it's, yeah, all of us, we have our own separate journey,
Mm,
and even, yeah, even it doesn't matter where we are on the journey. There is always people who are further ahead of us. There is always people who are less fur than us,
mm,
and we can compare ourselves. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I try to only compare myself to the version I was yesterday or the year before, and
mm,
even there I need to have compassion with myself because I might not be where I wanted to be 5 years ago, but in some
mm,
cases I'm already years ahead of where I wanted to be at some point. And I think the example that we just discussed about angriness, when that situation happened to me, it was like, damn it, that's a book I read 10 years ago. Why didn't I still learn it? Well, yeah,
mm.
there is that, whatever. I need to be compassionate about myself and learn, and,
Yes.
and just accept it. And I
Mm,
can feel really bad about that situation. At the same time, I can, like, okay, I know if I compare, if I'm now looking, if I look back at what that happened, I was a little bit like what you say. I was putting down on myself, and like, "Ah, why didn't I do it?"
mm,
And if
mm,
I look back now, a few months later, it's like, okay, I was able to even then accept it, seeing that things are happening. The fact that I realized at the moment that it was happening, that
mm,
I needed to talk with my coach, was already better than 5 years ago, because then it would take me 6 months before I even wanted to have that conversation
sure.
with my coach of being ready. Now
Mm,
I wrote it down while doing that. So that's already a huge improvement. It's still not where I want to be. So I'm still unhappy about that situation.
mm,
At the
mm,
same
mm.
time, yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, because that's exactly what I needed to hear. And I
Mm.
think a lot
I'm
of
glad.
us needed to hear that. So thank you for bringing that up. I want to move to that next question about who do you think I should ask next?
So I think the person I'd love to see you chat to is probably Rochelle Riss. I think
And I
I
think
gave
that's
her.
her, right?
Yes, that's her. I think she's really embodies, the whole agile mindset, and I think that's a term that's thrown around a lot. So it depends what your interpretation of an agile mindset is. But when I chat to Rochelle, and I mean, she was a fantastic part of my growth journey. Herself and Olga was another person. I think I also shared her LinkedIn. They were fantastic examples of what I'd hope to be in terms of Scrum Master. And I think
Mm.
that both of them would have some fantastic insights. And I think Rochelle also, as now a business owner, would have some fantastic insights to share with yourself and your audience. And I think the conversation would also be really lovely because they're both very knowledgeable, just generally lovely people. So they're definitely people who you should.
The second person, I missed the name. What was the name?
Olga, I think
Is
I did share it. It
is
might
that
have.
Olga?
No, that's Kirsten. So Kirsten as
Oh yeah,
well.
of course, yeah, of course. That's Kristen. This is
Yes,
Olga, right?
yes, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was so happy that I
No
could bring
problem.
someone up the screen that I didn't realize. Oh, Kristen. And this is bad because okay, I didn't meet Olga before, but I do know Kristen. So that's kind of sorry,
Yes.
Kristen.
And Kirsten as
But
well. Ah, man, some fantastic people you've shown there. So absolutely have them on.
so yeah, so thank you for bringing these people on because that's indeed good to have more. And like you say, people were, for example, Kirsten is somebody that was already on my list, but like I said in the conversation up front, I was waiting for people to invite them
Yes.
because yeah, it's too many people on my list, and I'm waiting for other people to invite because that's how this works. And these are yeah wonderful people to have conversations with.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It'll be lovely. I'd love to see the videos once you or not the videos when you flight them. It'll be great to see how the conversation goes.
Well, that's well, like I said earlier, it will probably take probably about a month before this video will go out. Well, I don't know the schedule by heart, and
Mm.
then yeah, usually I only invite people at the moment that the video goes live. Um, I need to look a little bit because during August I didn't invite that many people, so it might be already sending out some invites before
Mm-hmm.
this video goes out. I need to see it a little bit, but yeah, it can take a while. But
No
definitely
problem.
when these videos go out, and this is of course why people should subscribe. But definitely when these videos go out. I will tag you as the person that has
Awesome.
invited them, and
Appreciate that.
then you will learn some more about it. So I want to close up with the question that if people want to yeah to contact you,
Mhm.
what is a good way for people to contact you?
I think LinkedIn is probably the best one. I always keep my details up to date.
That I think is the LinkedIn.
That's the
Is
one.
that correctly?
I
Yes.
think that's the
So
correct one.
I'll add it to the show notes as well.
Perfect. But you're welcome to contact me there. I always respond via the messaging. Um, yeah, that's the best way to get hold of me. And I look forward to conversing with anyone who wants to. I'm always happy to talk about their journey, my journey, how we can learn from one another. So please reach out if you do have any questions or just want to have a conversation around agility. I'd appreciate it.
Well, well, I think everybody would see this already. This was a for me a very lovely conversation. I like it. Well, it's we've been like you said very deep right from the start, and that kind of
Mhm.
sets the pace for the rest of the conversation.
Absolutely.
But it was a lovely time. I hope people loved it as much as I loved it, and well, I would say thank you very much for your time, and let's keep in touch, and maybe one day we can actually indeed see each other, real time, real persons, face to face.
Yes.
Try hugging if
Absolutely.
whatever
That would be
securities
brilliant.
are safe at that time. We'll
Yes.
we'll see about that, but probably we'll only meet at the moment that it's safe. So then we can do all of that. So let's see
Thank
at
you.
that moment. So thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time, and I wish you a wonderful evening with the rest of your family.
Thank you. You as well. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you for
Bye.
watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.